Jim, thanks so much for joining me from Shanghai across the world on several different time zones. And I'm always amazed when I actually get it right and the times actually sync up. But I appreciate it. And I really, I was thinking in the back of my mind because we spoke last year and it was really a really interesting conversation. And, so much has changed. I know you're working on something similar, but something new around prediction markets. So it was important to catch up. So really appreciate you taking the time. So yeah, let me start because, just to understand where you are right now. So when we last spoke, I think it was around Climate Hedge and you were focused on, weather derivatives and, integrating that with the futures exchanges out in China. But now, if I understand it, you're shifting more to the prediction markets with WeatherBook. And so what sort of what created that pivot? What was it about the prediction markets in relationship
Uh,
to what you were doing before or am I getting it wrong?
yeah, so there's a couple things. First is the responding to the reality in China. When we last spoke, there are four futures exchange in China working on weather futures contract. And then at the end of last year, so the regulator said, and don't waste time. So they assign only one. So the other actually transfer all their research, all their property, everything to that Guangzhou Futures Exchange. So the timing is reset. Before they each had a weather index. So you had to have a weather index to have it work for at least a year. So basically get accepted, and then based on that you are requesting for to launch a new contract. Now they reset it, so the Guangzhou Futures Exchange actually launched a new index back in May. So it's a couple months ago. So if we really look at the timetable, it will be the earliest time they can even launch a futures contract will be like the second half of 2017 and possibly pushing to 2028. So based on that, right? So we evaluated. There's a kind of like a 2 year window that you cannot really do a lot except for only using the exchange and the official index to decide contract. So that's very limited. They basically temperature index for two region, right? So that's one thing. So okay, we basically reprioritize or push it a little bit backward until the exchange getting closer to launch. Then we really push. Before that, there's not a lot we can do. So that's one thing. The second thing is last year, that prediction market make it really big, particularly polling market, even like on
Yeah.
60 minute, right? So you see basically going into mainstream. And so we thinking about whether that will be a new way to design weather trading. So that's what I think was around November last year. So we made a decision, let's push that. But we want to kind of like separate what we already had in Climate Hedge because the legal compliance issue. So we basically use a new brand that's may not be affiliated with any of the previous business we had. So we are not really subject to regulation. So to speak, particularly in China, which is prediction market is banned here, and then. The way we look at it is whether it's the traditional weather future and option contract or the weather contract are launched on Robinhood, Kelsey, Poly Market, and Forecast X, right? That's basically still the same traditional. So every day ask you whether the temperature, like the daily high in New York, will be X, right? So it's basically the same. Really, you're asking for weather variable, whether about in prediction market, I look at it is different. It's event driven
Mm-hmm.
market. So even in the U.S. regulation, they also call it event contract, right? So you had to have an event, right? So whether tomorrow temperature go up 1 degree or going to rain like 5 millimeter, that's not an event.
Mm-hmm.
Hurricane is an event, right? The heat
Right.
wave is an event. So when you base a contract on non-event, they're not going to be very good because people don't look at weather, don't check weather until it's something wrong with it, right?
Right.
So if you had a weather app, weather AccuWeather or whatever, that if you check, okay, it's 78-degree sunny, then you basically close out, do something else. But when it's okay, a heat wave is coming or winter storm's coming, then you spend probably hour every day really periodically checking on it, right? So the
Right.
attention only arrive when there's a major event. So basically, so we decide entire our contract will be based on it had to have an event, but we expanded that from like the catastrophe weather itself as an event, but we also say when the whatever major event could be social, could be a sports, right? Economical event,
Mm-hmm.
when weather play a role. So that's important. For example, you are in New York, right? The World Cup final is on July 19 in MetLife Stadium, right outside of New York, right? So that day, that particular time, 3 p.m., 3 to 6, right? So the weather is very important. If you're trading weather on East Rutherford for New Jersey today is a non-event because it doesn't matter what today's weather. Nobody care. But it's
Mm-hmm.
on
Right.
when you had 100 million people, several 100 million people watching that, right? And also had 82,500 people in there. The weather become an event because it's an open air stadium. There's no protection from weather exposure, right? So we basically designed it in the contract will be not just the weather event, but major event that when weather is could make a difference. So we actually launched World Cup weather contract last month. So getting closer to ending now. So they had two more contract. Basically, one of the I think it was a third play, and then the final contract open air dome. The other two, the quarterfinal, they're basically in with like a retractable roof. That when weather is not an issue. So that's basically it made some difference. Yes.
Yeah, that's a quite a pivot. So if I understand correctly, you're moving ahead with Climate Hedge, but because of the um, constraints on regulation in China, this is sort of like the next step for you working on WeatherBook for the next few years, or it's not replacing what you're
Yes.
working on as far as derivatives are concerned.
Yeah, so you can say it's got a near time focus. Yeah, so
Right,
we
right.
where the book is kind of more aligned with the what how the regulation everything moving forward in China.
Yeah, so I wanted one question because have had some discussions with people working on prediction markets and weathers, and there's a whole bunch of issues. But who are you seeing as the natural buyers and sellers of the contract? In this, and is what you're working on. You talk a lot about like some of the sports events in the United States. I assume it's international, so you're dealing with everybody.
Yes, if you're really looking at prediction market, how they grow, before was the poly market, right? It is the
Right.
really the forefront. But then when Kalshi came along, because they gone through all the basically a legalized approach, unlike poly market, they did OTC for a while. So they cut on, and then if you really look at their focus is on sports. So Kelsey's doing a lot of
Right.
advertisement around workout, right? On TV and also social media and also like the billboard around the stadium. So they spend a lot of time, a lot of money doing that. So you can see that from the statistic I look at, they already outgrown poly market. So they are both in terms of their the trade volume and also their kind of like market value is already double and triple what a poly market is. So you can see that that's for them is the kind of low hanging fruit that move some of the sports betting people into using prediction market as a new way to bet.
Yeah, that's I actually never really thought. I mean, it's all coming together me now to
Yeah.
understand. Since there's a natural base of sports people betting on, outcomes, weather is just another variable in that, and a way to for the markets to. That's really interesting. So, I get. So, what are you saying as far as the natural? As I mentioned before, the natural buyers and sellers of this. I mean, you're not. These are strictly retail, or you're not dealing with any institutions on this? Because I know there are some funds in the U.S., Susquehanna or others, that are pretty big in, at least in sports, on the sports prediction markets.
Yes, I think I would say when we get a little bit bigger, that institutional interest will be because they're already into it, right? You've seen the Susquehanna International, they put in whatever 500 million, right,
Right.
into basically market making and hedging for just the World Cup, right? So then the other, they actually talked to European-based hedge fund. They're into basically closely watching the prediction market. So that's why they I guess they talk to a lot of people, including me, how
Mm.
they can end up. But normally the institution they basically require so you already have some liquidity big enough.
Right.
To work, they don't want to start something with no liquidity, right? So I think that we will say it take a couple years until we get there. So right now
Yeah.
that we are looking at the easily included is that the retail base. So sports is our first start that we showcase how they work and then whether it's relevant and then the other I think will be like we just launched typhoon similar to hurricane in the US.
Right.
We launched it a couple weeks ago. So look pretty good right now. So we actually under two typhoon right now in China here. So
Oh
it's
wow.
basically very interesting that with typhoon is you never know when the landfall going to be. It
Right.
change direction regularly. So
Right.
it's really interesting. It affect people when it change direction, right? So and then people interest in where it's going to land, what area is going to affect, and also how big the typhoon, right? Is the
Right.
category 5, category 4, right? So these are the two things they always had a lot of people watching it. Before, if you really look at the traditional insurance approach, if you are in Shanghai, you can only buy a contract that if typhoon landfall in Shanghai, right? You
Right.
can't
Right.
do anything else. So prediction market kind of lift that restriction. So anybody, I simply ask a question where the next typhoon going to land. So I give them 5 choice, different location in China provinces. So in one question, people will trade all the location. So you can see that all the liquidity will go into one contract. Instead, I know you had question about that the CME's hurricane
Right.
landfall. So basically, when we launched our, we actually look at that as well. Before we they had like 7 location. Each location by itself is a separate futures contract. So it make it extremely difficult. You don't have liquidity because you already spreading all the trade across seven different contracts, and then you have to buy them all if you want to get covered. So it's a way that the why they never really caught on is just that never had enough liquidity.
So, just pivoting on that a little bit in terms of typhoon is, are you are I never really got this in my head, but are you saying are this is this open to prediction markets? Are they open to people in China, like retail people in China, or is that who you're dealing with?
No, right now, is basically we in China we can always we can only really do educational, like kind of like a
Right, right.
guessing game. Where
Yeah,
do you
yeah,
think the next iPhone, right? So there's no incentive, no pay, no money, anything. So we can do a little bit like that educational. People using some of the people using an app to try to guess, because they use paper money, there's no loss, and then so we get away with a little bit that. But I think that if we really want to be open to China, that will be probably we need to partner with an insurance company to do that. But for insurance companies, right, you try to break a concept with them is extremely difficult. That's why we make it like a paper trade so everybody can go in to try it out and test and also see the result. So that is a lot more convincing than just a PowerPoint presentation talking about a new
yeah,
concept.
yeah. Well, may I ask you this? Because I've talked to a couple people in the prediction markets who are working around weather, and there's sort of the short term, like how do I functionally make this work, and then there's long term vision where prediction markets supplant or replace insurance in some way, and so, and I guess that's what some of the trading firms are thinking about. What are your thoughts about that? I mean, the prediction markets where do the prediction markets sit between insurance, derivatives, and the entire ecosystem? Is it a zero sum game, or can they work in harmony in some way?
I would say open up a new market for the retail. So before you had a lot of people exposed to weather, but they really no financial trading, right? So they're all either kind of like a buyer of a country or they set by people,
Mm.
or they can get involved at all. But prediction market actually, the way it functions, right, you is a binary. So when you buy yes, basically when the event happen, you get paid, right? So that's hedging the
Right.
risk. You say, okay, typhoon. But what if you buy no? When the event doesn't happen, you get paid. That's actually the function of selling insurance. So when
Mm.
you buy no on an event, so when the event doesn't happen, you get paid. So now you can have anybody that can buy no instead of like you had institutional people to
Yeah.
buy insurance and then only insurer to sell insurance. So you open up who can buy yes and no. So actually that works. So without the like insurable interest clause, that kind of thing. So that may make it bring in a lot of liquidity.
So yeah, I just want to hit back a little bit at the derivatives because and sort of your perception of retail because in our last conversation, I think it was October last year. Um, you talked about how the absence of retail participation was a major design. Lack of retail participation was a major design flaw in like legacy weather derivatives, and you were talking about expanding that. You know, per some of your discussion, is that just on hold, or are you working on the background of how that can work, or is that something you're just going to put on the table for now?
Uh, I think, for example, I did talk to a couple legacy future exchange per se that I was making basically some uh, proposal that say, well, if you launch a weather contract, then you need the OTC market to make it more liquid, right? So you can be that one, right? So you can make a contract that accept by CFTC a lot of restriction, but we
Right.
can make a retail version and make it more fun to trade, right? So that's something that we had discussion with, but it probably uh, take a lot for them to agree because they also had their own compliance issue with it. So for China, I think the same thing will be once they launch a weather future contract, then open up that you can have OTC that are not necessarily related to temperature. Once you had one futures contract, you can come up with a lot of the OTC as long as it's in the weather category. So I
Right.
think that make it more possible that the enroll in China. So right now it's basically our potential partner. They can actually, when we talk to them, they can look at our platform and see how that work. The same thing. When you talk about World Cup weather, then the traditional they probably don't know how to take it. Only the retail care about it. But
Mm.
once you have the hurricane, and also our next contract is the European heat wave contract.
Oh, right,
So
right.
that really get a lot of people involved. We are basically trying different type of contract. For example, also like the commodity trading contract, like the soybean and the
Right.
corn. Those are basically right now that you don't have weather contract focusing on the cornfield, right? It's only the large city. So right now we basically had the U.S. Corn Belt, right? Based on that, we fixed that, and then you're looking at the weather only at the area. So that made people that trading long and short the corn future option
Hmm.
contract, they can use that as a hedge as well.
Wow, that's amazing. It's I'm always surprised by the way derivatives and how you can slice and dice it. One thing I wanted to ask you on, I mean, there's always sort of like a lot of regulatory drama in the United States when it comes to prediction markets, and the CFTC has moved pretty fast, and you're so reviewing several applications that want to operate prediction markets. Is is WeatherBook pursuing anything like that? Are they just going to partner with existing exchanges? What's your plans for that?
Yes, we right now we are open to everything that but pursuing a license, a particular CFTC license will be much a longer haul. And if you look at Poly Market, they started in 2020. They
Mm.
didn't get the license until 2025, right? Those took them 5 years. Hopefully, we can do that in maybe a couple years. But right now, we're definitely not at that stage yet.
What's the in your mind, with all the different avenues that you could trade, what's the realistic path for prediction markets to move from like this sort of like retail, almost like, I don't want to like phrase it, but it's something I can think of, like sort of novelty volume into institutional? Where in your mind does that, or can you even conceive of that right now?
Uh, you just look at how Polymarket or uh, Kelsey did, right? So start with retail, but now since they are basically CFTC designated contract market, so the institution coming. So but that thing why the institution coming because it's already big enough. It's a very liquid market, right? So
Mm.
that and then they get their legal compliance done, so pay the way for them to trade. So that's a natural flow. So it's kind of like you have to. So for us, it's similar to what Polymarket the early stage. So you do everything to bring user in to get
Right.
liquidity, get that start first. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you say? Because there are a number of critics in around prediction markets, and specifically in weather prediction markets. And there was a story in France of someone
Yes.
playing with an outlet, and some of the sort of incentives that aren't that very positive. What's your thoughts on that?
So is no different whether trading that people want to profit from it, then you trade gold and crude oil, right?
Hmm.
So why the crude oil price go up? Because there's something, a war going on, right?
Yeah, yeah,
What the gold price going on? Always some disaster, man-made or natural disaster happen with some of the commodity go up. So people trade that without some moral hazard, right? I'm
hmm,
buying gold not because I'm praying for the war to end, right?
right, right,
So the whether you basically take that off, that is an event that will happen, and it creates some risk, but also create trading opportunity, profit opportunity for other. So it's go side by side. I think the thing to get away with that is that that's why I said you have to have real event that so then no mistake on whether a typhoon hit your county or something. But if that reading the temperature go up 1 or 2 degrees, that's a non-event. That's easy to manipulate. You find out how to do that. But once whether in the World Cup final whether it rain or not, so you
yeah,
should
yeah.
not you can make it right.
No, that makes sense. I guess when you talked, because you have great perspective on this, working in Asia and having having worked in the U.S. Is are there different perceptions of that risk when it comes to regulators? Are international regulators a little bit more understanding of what those risks are, and or how would you describe that?
I think is of course it's a controversial market, just like crypto at the early day, right?
Right.
But even after so many years, there's still a lot of country ban them. So when I talk to a French venture capital fund, right, they banned it there too, right? But that it doesn't prohibit the venture capital looking into trading or investing in that. So I think you had like 200 countries, right? So you can find
Yeah.
enough of them, enough user base. Yeah.
Yeah. Because a lot of when I talk to people, especially covering this area, we talk about the underlying science, and I've had discussions, um, actually with Patrick Brenna, Interactive Brokers, where he mentioned that the markets, a lot of the markets that he works with already beat some of the National Weather Service outcomes because they're sort of better incentivized in terms of human judgment. So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, the underlying science, and where do you land on like WeatherBook? Is it a risk transfer mechanism? Is it a price discovery engine? Is it or is it an information product? How would you describe that?
So I would say at the beginning, when mostly retail participation is a price discovery. So when you're asking the people where the typhoon direction going to be, then enough people trading it to give you basically a crowd source based forecast where everybody like put has skin in the game, right? So they're a lot better than an expert. When they predict wrong, they don't get penalized. But when everybody trade, you get it wrong, you lose money. So that's kind of the mechanism. How? So is we don't have a forecast model in whether but we basically utilize other people to form a baseline. So when it come up initial price, they're always wrong. But then when
Right.
people start trading it, it will go toward that equilibrium, right? So that's the concept. Let the market decide where the price should be. The price is the forecast.
Mhm. What I guess with your own what you're working on with a weather book, you're already saying like these like larger platforms expand into different areas, and you know, you know, CME is partnered with FanDuel, ICE is partnering, put money into Poly Market. There's Robinhood and Binance. So what's the you're thinking about WeatherBook and weather specialist platforms in general? You know, competing with these larger exchanges, do they feed into it, or they're their own thing? How would you describe that?
So I would say that when they get big, they're very slow to innovate. So like we are the first one to have the World Cup weather. Really the first one that come up with the concept and then start actually had the product list. And then the heat wave, I think we are also the first one that did that. And in a way that anybody can trade. You don't need a lot of the expertise experience. So very common thing where the, for example, the whether the London the month of July, how many days the daily high in London will be exceeding like say 100 degrees or something like
Mm-hmm.
that, right? So you're counting the number of days. So that's very easy for people to trade. They don't have to
Right,
really
right.
have a forecast model. So I think the innovation that right now we are looking at this kind of thing that the larger competitor won't be able to compete. Particularly, I think they were driven by volume and profit. That they think the whether is a niche market small, they're not willing to commit resource to it. So
Right.
that's our chance. Yes.
So one question I had was, there's all these, and we talked about the different perils we work with and extreme events, and you know, of course, a big one that everybody's focused on always is Atlantic hurricane and landfall issues. Where do you see, you talked a little bit about your typhoon work and some of the heat work. Where do you see, what perils do you see the deepest liquidity in right now?
Like I think last time I told you about the weather app that has 700 million users, right? So we basically from the idea of particularly like travel. I think they're curious about it, but at the time we haven't had the product yet. So we are
Mm,
going to talk to them soon. Once they see the typhoon and heat wave, the traditional, they actually will play very well with the weather app. So I think that will be whether it's the weather app or online travel agency, that will be they have the reach to tens of hundreds of millions of people. That will be the way to do that. And then it's also make it basically a risk price. It's not like the traditional insurance that they fix the price that they can never really
right.
change the price, right? So you sell it along with your airfare, but it's not that you can based on the weather forecast and change the price. So this will be a lot more flexible, and people can buy it standalone. So if the this partner, we eventually be able to form partner with them, that
Mm.
there will be huge application. That's not replacing any institutional weather hedging trading. So it's an entirely new market.
Yeah, and this is my final question because we were gracious for the time is, um, as a new market, right? And especially in China, which is, you know, I've spoken to a few people, and what it seems they're sort of building a sort of a not an alternative, but like an Asian market that sort of mimics what the West has in London or New York, and all these different layers to it. There's even either there's also Chinese weather modeling that has its own underlying systems. Where do you see prediction markets in that? Does WeatherBook connect all those threads as a layer within this risk ecosystem that China's building?
I wouldn't say so because of whether what we specifically make it is a non-China related, but whatever you achieve here that we can use this basically the underlying logic to make something similar, but also comply to China's law using Climate Hedge, that the partnership with China. So definitely not in the binary binary option type of format. But we need to showcase these risks are being taken by people, being traded by people. So then they will be interested in this area. But
Right.
will be probably made modification more like the future option parametric insurance type of format.
That makes sense. Great. Those are my questions. I really appreciate taking time, and welcome back from a great World Cup experience for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. Nice having me.